Hi guys, I'm back again. I'm going to switch off the camera, so I'm going to continue with session 2 now. I'm done with session 1. So before the battery dies on this, so let me complete it. I'm going to share my screen and take you through to where we left off. Okay, so we've dealt with quite in depth about corporate reputation and in terms of how we spoke about profitability and the relationship between the two. So establish whether profitability drives reputation or reputation drives profitability. And sometimes it is pretty much the same thing, whether it's profitability or reputation. To that was a reputation. So one of us have a reputation and image to uphold. And I gave you the example of a CEO, where your CEO is perhaps involved in unethical behavior and you do it, and that is how you are able to actually gauge in terms of people. And remember, it's over a period of time that employees are able to gauge what the reputation is. Cover very quickly. Some companies are not that lucky. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to brand equity and brand value. We're going to look at how brands contribute to organizational value. And that is very important. So the importance of brand in creating organizational value. Brands add to the organizational value. And this example I think I've used before is that they add to the organizational value in terms of overall. This is linked to perception, it links to reputation, all of it, right? And value can also relate to the sales of product. The sales of product and the impact it has on the organization. If the sales are doing really well, an organization, the profitability will be up. So when brands create organizational value, this occurs when brands are the core element that establishes a relationship between the organization and its stakeholders, ensuring that the organization will deliver on promises it has made to its stakeholders or customers. Brands create value because they contribute significantly to the income generation of the organization, ensuring a unique selling position and competitive advantage. So, like I mentioned just now, is that brands, it contributes to the bottom line, which is the triple bottom line is people, profit, and planet. So it's the profit aspect of the triple bottom line. What you can do is read up about the triple bottom line. It's a term that many organizations use, and they contribute. So the brands create value in the sense that not only when the consumer buys the product, but also to that it attaches, the customer attaches experience they have with the brand, etc. And what this does, it creates a unique selling position and a competitive advantage. So when you look at customers and when we say unique selling position and a competitive advantage, it's like in the session 1 that I made use of Checkers 60/60, where before, a couple of months before the COVID-19 pandemic entered into South Africa, what had happened was Checkers launched this Checkers 60/60 app, and that was actually a blessing in disguise for them. Not that the COVID-19 pandemic was just dreadful and awful, because people lost their lives and it was chaos. If economies were just disrupted, and it had a negative impact across the board. So for Checkers 60/60, when they had this already in place, they didn't need to scramble and find a solution to be able to, for consumers to actually order products online and have this delivered to the organization, to the customer's home. So a competitive advantage is when a company has Panado. Panado is the number one selling um, medication or that you get over the counter. So it comes in so many different formats. It's not just in the get the Panado syrup, especially for it as well, is because of the taste of it. So they made sure that it really tastes nice, so that children would be able to actually take the medication. So that is what the unique selling position and competitive advantage is. If you think in your mind of products that you consistently go and purchase, and services that you continually sign up for, and think, why is it that you chose one over the other? If you look in the telecommunication space, you have MTN, you have Vodacom, you have Telkom. Why is it that you choose one of them specifically? Or even you have Netflix, you have Showmax, you have so many different channels. Why is it that you use one specifically? A brand then comes a promise of value. So you remember we spoke of companies offering or making a promise and delivering on that promise. Then a brand becomes a promise of value. So the brand is going to promise that they are going to deliver on that specific value for that specific brand. Now, what is the difference when we look at brand value and brand equity? Let's differentiate between the two. Brand equity is the brand strength, the effect the brand has on the consumer. Now, if you look at the word equity, what is the meaning of equity? Equity means, for example, if you look at, you've got like in accounting equation, they say assets is equal to owner's equity minus liability, or whatever the equation is. I've actually forgotten my accounting equation. So it is something that is valuable and similar to the reputation. If you look at reputation of a corporate organization, right, this is similar, but it's called brand equity, but specifically to a brand. It's how strong the brand is in the market and the effect the brand has on the consumer. Why McDonald's? Why KFC? Why Coca-Cola and not Pepsi? Or why Pepsi and not Coca-Cola? There's just so many reasons. So the equity of the brand, even Unilever, if you look at it, there's different comparisons. But brand equity is in essence something that's intangible, and it's how strong the brand is. So remember, we spoke of the example where you go into different markets, you're still able to identify with the logo or the signage that this is maybe a McDonald's, or even Coca-Cola in any country across the world. The same goes for that. Brand value is the financial gain the organization derives from the brand, right? Now, financial means actually money, so it's a profitability, and it's defined. There's two aspects to it. So it's a financial approach and the customer-based approach. But we'll talk to that just now. Let's look at brand equity first. That which defines a brand's value or worth financially and through other means. So what it could be also, it could be, if you look at a specific brand, it's whatever they have accumulated, right? And it gives you a value or it's financially equivalent. So there's two approaches when it comes to brand equity. And the one is the financial approach. So buying and selling, generating an income and increased market share. So when I spoke about Panado and being the leader in the market, so we said there's market research companies that are able to establish what share of the market of people that actually purchase, right, pain and fever medication. They look at all the companies that manufacture it, and Panado, for example, is the leader in that category. That is the market share, and increase of market share increases the brand equity. The second aspect to it is the consumer-based approach. Now, this is where the consumer becomes invested in this approach. It's where the consumer has an emotional attachment to the brand, and they have a sense of trust that the brand will deliver what has been promised. So it is an emotional attachment to the brand, a sense of trust that the brand will deliver what has been promised. When you look at a TV commercial or any in the magazine, if you look at an advert and this is what they're promising, and you have a sense, it's an emotional attachment that you have, right? The brand has got to deliver on it. So if you look at examples of skincare products, and they guarantee or they say that they position this product that when you use this particular product, your skin will become softer, especially in winter. And then if you use the product and if it delivers on that, the consumer then makes an emotional attachment to the brand. Brand equity is also a set of assets or liabilities that either contribute to or detract from the value of the product or the service represented by the brand. So I thought I knew my accounting equation. Yes, so it's assets. So owner's equity is equal to assets minus liabilities. So your equity, if you want to know what your total equity is, you take your assets, you subtract it from or you take your liabilities and subtract it from your assets, and you will be left with exactly what your brand equity is. It involves the brand's visibility, the association the stakeholders have with the brand, or stakeholders' loyalty to the brand. Then when we look at brand value, right, let's just see what it means or what it speaks to. The financial worth of the brand in the marketplace, how much stakeholders are willing to pay for a particular brand at a particular point in time, and how it relates to corresponding brands. Now, if you look at, for example, the different makes of vehicles, you have Toyota, you have a Yaris, you have a Honda Jazz, a Honda BRV, a Volvo, and then you have a Ferrari, you have a Bentley, you have a Porsche. They're customers who are willing to pay a premium for a particular brand, like Porsche, right? Or a Bentley or a Maserati. You've got to have a lot of money to buy that. So in actual fact, it it's the value or the worth that it's actually the brand value that the customer attaches to a specific product or service. The same goes for watches. You can spend up to 50 or 100,000 on a tag watch or one of these fancy brands, and you can get a watch that costs 250 Rand or 300 Rand that does the same, very same purpose. It tells the time, but there are some customers who are willing to pay a premium because they have placed a very high brand value on that specific product or service, and they're willing to pay the price. The intrinsic underlying value of the brand. So what the brand is worth to management and shareholders, and what the brand means to the organization. So there's three aspects there. When you look at a brand, the value that management attaches to the brand, the value that shareholders attach to the brand, and then the organization as a whole, what is the value that it attaches to the brand? So if you look at shareholders, they are people who have bought shares into a company and they would like for the brand to do well. So they're invested in ensuring that they get good dividends paid out. And that is why they are so heavily invested in that, because they have paid money to buy shares and they would like to see a return on their investment. The same goes for management and the same goes for organization. Now, when we look at the organization, and earlier we spoke on corporate identity, which had the strategy element to it. Now, it is very important. That is why the sort of induction process into an organization is very important, is that to go through the company's strategy. Actually, every individual in the organization should know what is the organization's strategy, the values. So people should know the values off by heart, because this is something they need to implement in their daily working lives. So you may have an organization that places a high or has a high brand value. However, management may not, because they are not fully aligned to the mission, vision, values, objectives of the organization. Brand value is not just a subjective value, it's the true financial value of the brand. This is linked to profitability, growth, and risk. So with brand value, it's linked to profitability, meaning sales, and this is increasing. Growth in terms of market share, so that means it is competitive, it has unique positioning, that means that it is different from its competitors, and also there is a chance of risk. If you look at the same Unilever example that I made earlier in session 1, if you looked at what Unilever was trying to do in Brazil, which they did succeed, they tried implementing something similar in the lower income markets in India, and they actually fell flat on their face. So it does not necessarily mean, so there is a level of risk attached to brand value, because if something goes wrong, the brand value is then, it decreases. The market share will decrease. Profitability will decrease. So there is some level of risk. Profitability means cash flow and sales, etc. Growth is increasing the organization's cash flow, the market share. The risk is instability of cash flow at certain periods. So remember, the risk means that if there is at some point a problem, for example, a product has also been recalled from a specific market, and then there will be a decrease in cash flow because the product is there was something wrong. Just say, for example, if it was the Johnson & Johnson baby powder, you will find sometimes that when you go into a store and you're looking for a specific product, it's out of stock. Now, there are a number of reasons it could be out of stock. It could be that the raw materials that the company uses to actually produce the products, there's a shortage of it, and the company, for example, only has one supplier. They do not have a wide range of suppliers. It's not a very easy raw material to get, right? There may be that a product had to be recalled due to some defect in the actual production process, and that caused a problem. So when we look at cash flow and profit, right? So what is cash flow? Just think about it for a minute. And it's always a good idea, even though you're in public relations, like I was telling you guys yesterday, that the day before, you have what we call, there's courses called Finance for Non-Finance Managers. And it's a good idea to actually get an understanding of cash flow, profit, just some of the financial terminology, and also what it encompasses. So when you're saying cash flow, what elements are there to that? It's the total amount of money being transferred in and out of a business, especially as affecting liquidity. So what this means is cash flow is money in, right, from sales, money out from paying suppliers, from paying for raw materials, for whatever the case may be. And this affects the liquidity. So the liquidity essentially is the amount of money that is left in the bank account, right? There's a calculation, and you can do it where it tells you if a company has like a liquidity ratio of this is what it means, right? So they need a company should never have very little money. They should always have good liquidity, meaning more money in the bank account. Even after money has flown in and flown out of the business, they should still have a certain amount of money in the bank. What is profit? If financial gain, especially the difference between the amount earned and the amount spent in buying, operating, or producing something. So like the example I used just now, it's all the money, and it's like if you look at expenses, if you look at every month, you may do a budget. You're paying X amount for rent, X amount for food, etc. And this is the amount that you get, maybe 50,000 Rand a month. And then it's the money that you have left after you have paid all of your expenses. So this goes into everything in the manufacturing environment. It's everything from buying the raw materials, the cost of producing it, which means operating. So there's costs attached in a manufacturing environments like electricity, water, the labor costs, and so forth, right? And then there's also, you got to get the product transferred from point A to point B, and then you've got to get it into the retail space, and then all of that. And then you've got to pay for shelf space. So it's all of that deducted, and then what is left is a profit. Right, let us watch this one. The most valuable brands in the world. Let's see. Just want to go to the videos. Just need to get this link quickly. So for some reason, it's not opening up on my side. Just give me 2 minutes. Okay, I've got the link. This hour, there's the ambulance going somewhere or the police going somewhere. Okay. I'm going to paste this, pause it, and then share my screen.
Before we were using.
I'm going to share my screen. Oh, come on, my mouse is not acting up. We're going to share. Here we go.
Using Monday.com, our team was drowning in work.
Our days used to split between work.
Okay, so when you look at this specific video, what is so interesting is, and it's probably changed, if I'm not mistaken, that was the 2021 one that was done. You can go through and have a look at the latest ones. They are online, so you're more than welcome to go through and have a look. But it does change. So in 2021, Amazon was the #1 brand in the world. And you could possibly, if you sit and think, what were some of the reasons, and why do you think it's #1, right? So remember the COVID-19 pandemic that started in March 2020, and possibly why Amazon was #1 in 2021 was perhaps because Amazon was an existing e-commerce platform, which means you could order your things online and get it delivered to your door. And there was a lot of people, and that speaks to how valuable the brand is to stakeholders, is that customers religiously used like Amazon. And I can only think that is the reason why at that stage they were number one. So do some research and see what are the other companies that come up, even if you can try and do like 2022 and 2023 even, and see what comes up. Now we're going to go through components contributing to brand value of an organization. There are a number of components that when you look at them, right, they all contribute to the brand value of the organization. So brand strength means brand equity. It's how strong the brand is. How does the marketplace activities contribute to creating value? Now, when you look at the brand value model, right, there's a number of what do you call them? The squares and the circles, right? In terms of how this model is broken up. So the model is split into two. They have value stages at the top and they have multiplier at the bottom. So when you look at the value chain, the value chain that has several principles, and this is from it's Boab and Bukili, right? This is the model that was developed by these individuals, and it literally says that it depicts brand value from the mindset of the consumer or customer. So if you look in the second block at the top, so when you go, let's just start from the first block. So you have the value stages, and if you look horizontally, there's 4 blocks. Then when you look at the bottom, there's a multiplier. It has 3 circles, which cuts across these 4 blocks. So the first one is the marketing program investment. Now, this would mean the product, right? The communication around the product, how it goes into the trade. It also includes employees, because employees will be involved in implementing, conceptualizing these programs. Then we have the customer mindset. And this one we'll drill down and talk to a little bit in detail. So you have awareness, associations, attitudes, attachment, and activity. These are some of the terminology that you are familiar with, which we've covered at length. The market performance relates to the price premium. So remember, in terms of the examples that I made, some people will pay a premium price for a product. So even though it's expensive, they will still buy it, first because it gives them a specific kind of value that they feel it's worthwhile paying this amount of money. Even a Gucci bag, if there's someone who places a very high value in terms of this Gucci bag, irrespective of the price, they're going to pay for it because it's fashionable. It says something when they're using this bag, whatever the case may be. Market share, we've spoken to market share. So when you look at the market and how a brand is performing, you would look at the market share, and this is where companies also measure. So there's some companies, like if you look at like a Nestle, if you look at Unilever, Cadbury's, many of these big companies, even in the financial sector with the banking sector, and the expansion of different banks, like the top 5, I've explained what they were this week. Now you have in the mix Capitex, you have Time Bank, you have Bank Zero, I think, and then you have Discovery Bank. I've heard of so many people migrating to Discovery Bank, and maybe it's worthwhile. It's something I'll go and look into as to what is it, why are people shifting so drastically from their banks that they've been using for years and years to Discovery Bank. So Discovery Bank is also now a part of their offering, apart from home insurance, car insurance, healthcare, vitality, retirement, life cover, disability cover. They've added banking to the mix. And yeah, so Discovery Bank is doing quite well, but a lot of people are migrating to the bank, to Discovery Bank. So they're gaining market share. Expansion success. So if a product line is expanding, right, the success of it. So when I say the expansion of a line, a product line, what I mean is if you have, for example, you have Coca-Cola, then you have Coke Light, and then you may have something else. The same goes for a soap, right? You will have Dove soap, the original. Then you'll have one with the lavender fragrance. So those are called line extensions, right? Cost structure, profitability, all speak to the market performance. Shareholder value. So when the stock prices or the share prices of a company drops, it is not good at all. It's unsettling because that means the value of the shares are reducing, right? When it's increasing, it's shareholders are happy because they know they're going to get paid a good dividend. So that speaks to the profit and equity ratio as well. Market capitalization refers to a company and its worth. So you will see that some companies, they have a market capitalization of 10 billion rand or whatever the case may be. But that is how, when they say market capitalization, it means what is the value of the company in the market. Then at the bottom, you have program quality, which speaks to clarity, relevance, distinctiveness, consistency. Marketplace conditions, competitive reactions, channel support, customer size, and profile. So this is linked to the two blocks above. And the competitive reactions is, this is where you have a competitive advantage. It sets you apart from your competitors. Your channel support is like I was telling you yesterday about the retail environment. And if you go into a store, into a retail store, you will find clearly, if you walk in an aisle, you can see Tastic rice. And the positioning of the product on the shelves, right, or in the store, that is called channel support. Customer size and profile, it's depending on how many people actually buy the product. So you will have sales reps going into stores regularly to see how fast stock is moving off the shelf, right? And how often they've got to ensure that product is delivered. Because the last thing you want, right, is for a customer to go in store and they are making pasta and they're looking for the specific type of pasta that they always use this brand that they've always used, and it's out of stock. And they really need to buy pasta and they do not have time to shop, well, go from shop to shop to shop. So what do? They buy an alternative brand because it's pasta, right? And when they make this pasta, it actually tastes so nice. And what they do is then their brand loyalty shifts from the other brand to the new product. So it is very important. Sales reps are constantly in the supermarkets. And the reason why they do this is to ensure that, do they have enough stock? And if there's a stock shortage, why is that? And how can, if their products are running low, is to get product delivered there, which can be stored. So with supermarkets, not sure if you know this, when product gets delivered, there are warehouses at the back of stores. So if you are passing a store, what you should do is look at the building, right? And then at the back is normally where they actually have a warehouse and they store excess product. And as the shelves empty, they replenish the product. Then we have investor sentiment, which is linked to the last two blocks above, the square blocks. That is market dynamics, growth potential, risk profile, and brand contribution. So when we look specifically at the customer mindset and around brand awareness, right? Brand awareness, this is the extent to which stakeholders can recall and recognize the brand as well as identify the products and services which the organization is associated with. Brand associations, this includes the strength, favorability, and uniqueness of perceived attributes and benefits for the brand. Brand associations are extremely valuable to the organization because they are associated with the way in which consumers feel brands might satisfy their needs. Brand attitudes, these are the overall evaluations of the brand in terms of its quality and the satisfaction that it generates. Brand attachment, this depicts how loyal stakeholders feel towards the brand. In other words, no matter what happens to the brand, stakeholders do not change their position and stay attached to the brand. Brand activity, this is the extent to which stakeholders use the brand, communicate to other stakeholders about the brand, and seek out brand information, promotion, and events. So if you look on page 181, going through to 182, on 182, you will find this model in your textbook, and it will give you a breakdown and an understanding. Please do read up on the because I'm not covering every single thing in all of the sections here. I'm just highlighting specifically the main ones, but all of them are important. So it's really good to actually go and have a look and read through the chapters. So when we look at the basic principles of value chain, right? So what it basically says is brand value is depicted from the mindset of the consumer, right? So it begins with the mindset the consumer has, right? Then creating brand value begins with organizations' marketing attempts, and this is where the brand value actually begins. Because when a product is being marketed out there, customers become aware. Remember marketing and advertising. So marketing is to create awareness, education about a brand, right? So that is the first step where the brand value actually begins, and then it continues further down the line. The marketing programs are all aimed at all customers, new and existing. So it doesn't matter whether you have existing customers who are using the brand. So remember then what we are doing, we are reinforcing the brand in the customer's eyes. So you're reinforcing the brand, and these programs are aimed at all customers, and they want to, the aim of the marketing campaigns is not only for existing customers, it's to attract new customers in the hope that these customers will be so interested that they will actually try and experience the brand. The next principle is the organization attempts to influence the customer's mindset towards the brand. So remember the three elements when we unpack them, what public relations is, what marketing is, and advertising. Advertising is where the persuasion happens in terms of the customer. Then in terms of the next principle, the brand will perform in a certain way based on how stakeholders view the brand. how the product is bought, used, or sold. So remember, when someone buys a product, and we actually spoke about this, funny enough, in one of the modules that I'm doing now in my studies is marketing in the connected world. So this is how things evolve. It's no longer just marketing. So it's marketing in a connected world, because post the COVID-19 pandemic, the platforms have moved to an online portals, or through mobile applications or websites where people can actually access these online platforms. So the other day in class, we were trying to, so although a company, right, or the brand will advertise in terms of, or market the uses for a specific product, customers may not necessarily use that product for what it's supposed to be used for. So the example that one of the students raised in class is, he said Zambuck, because the lecturer asked, do you know if, what examples can you give? So he said Zambuck. He said Zambuck is actually for wounds. It's to treat wounds, but it's used on the lips, which is not advertised as one of the uses or the primary benefits of using it, but it works wonders, and hence they're using the product for a different reason, not specifically what it is being advertised. So the brand's performance in the market is another principle. Market share, profitability, pricing is evaluated to determine the shareholder value and brand value. Now, with regards to pricing, that is very key, because there are customers who have very stringent budgets and can only spend a certain amount for certain things. And there are customers, on the other hand, who don't even look at the price tag, because they can easily afford it because they know they have enough money in their bank account. So that is very interesting. So I don't know if you know this, but I heard this week. So we've been having fairly regular interest rate hikes. So the prime lending rate has consistently increased substantially. So they said we are on the brink of, well, when they were reporting it on the news, South Africa is on the brink of a recession, because next week, for people who are driving petrol vehicles that make use of petrol, they will be paying 52 cents more per litre for fuel. However, on the flip side, the cost of diesel is decreasing, because it could be that there's a lot of people who are making use of generators as well. I have no idea, but this speaks to economics, and that's something that I'm trying to learn a bit more about, because it then helps you understand how the country works and what factors affect what. So we are on the brink of recession, because if you look at customers who are struggling currently, and for someone who has to drive, making use of a vehicle that's petrol, right, uses petrol, they've got to fork out more money from the first week of May, which is for me quite sad. And there was mention that there could be possibly another interest rate hike in May as well. So that will be interesting to follow. So when we look at 5 dimensions that are used to assess brand value, there is brand awareness, right, which we've spoken about. Brand associations, we've covered that. Brand attitudes, we've also covered that. Brand attachment and brand activity. I think just for the interest of understanding and read it again, if I look, it is on page 183. It's on page 183, and you can read the relevant text that goes in. Okay. We have a video here. Brand equity versus brand value. I have that video saved, I think. Brand value versus. I'm just going to open it, pause it, and then share the screen.
Brand value is the economic value of a business name. It refers to the monetary value of a brand or its working currency. Coca-Cola's brand value, for example, is estimated at $81 billion. McDonald's brand value is $124 billion. McDonald's incorporates brand value in their franchise fee, making it one of the most valuable brand names today. Brand value can also be a reflection of investor confidence to the business. A company's net worth, share price, and revenues can be used to determine brand value. Brand equity, on the other hand, refers to the economic benefits received by a business because of the positive consumer perception towards its product and services. If a product carries a favorable and sought after reputation among consumers, this equates to having a high brand equity. A product having a high brand equity is profitable, easy to market, and easily creates consumer loyalty. Brand equity must be supported by market research, such as the usage, attitude, and image model, the most popular research model for measuring brand equity. Ultimately, brand value and brand equity all depends on the commitment of an enterprise to provide value to customers.
Okay. That was a short video in terms of brand equity and brand value. Let's get back to our slides. Didn't see that one. Just give me 2 seconds, guys. Just need to get to the slide to copy this link. Okay, so if you look at those brands, and in terms of the brand value, you saw Apple had surpassed quite a few brands to actually get to number 1. And so I'm going to share this. It's actually not a video, but it's an article. I'm going to share it on the screen here. Okay. So it's I think we spoke about this brand. Was it this brand? I can't remember. So it's a story of Mrs. Ball's chutney, and it's deemed a South African classic. So a much-loved condiment, Mrs. H.S. Ball's chutney has graced the dinner tables of South African households for decades. This product was created by the Ball family and still displays the family crest on top of the label today. While its history is complicated, its popularity can be traced back to the mother city. The official Mrs. Ball's website claims that the recipe first belonged to an Indian chef aboard the SS Kwanzaa. In 1852, the SS Kwanzaa shipwrecked off the coast of East London, South Africa, while en route from Canada to Australia. Captain Henry Atkins and his wife Sarah survived and saved the blueprint for what would become the country's most famous chutney recipe. However, there are arguments that the story is false and only told to dramatize the product's history. The shipwreck actually occurred in 1872, in not 1852, as the official website says. What we know for sure is that the pair settled down in Fort Jackson near King Williamstown, where they had a family, 7 boys and 4 girls. Sarah had been making the chutney since the 1870s and continued to do so throughout the years. They passed the recipe down to one of their daughters named Amelia, who would later become Mrs. Ball when she married Mr. Herbert Sandleton Ball. Herbert worked as a goods superintendent in Cape Town for South African Railways, so the couple and their 7 children moved all over Cape Town. Wherever they went, the recipe went too. They eventually settled in Fishhook, and her husband would sell bottles of chutney on the train to Cape Town. Amelia would often make the chutney for church bazaars and soon began making the chutney commercially to make more money for her family. It became very popular, and the family ran a small-scale operation from their kitchen. Businessman Fred Mehta helped the family scale up the business, and together they opened the first factory in Retreat. He was also the one who chose the famous octagonal shape of the bottle and insisted it be kept in a glass bottle instead of plastic. The name went from Mrs. Henry Atkinson, Colonel Chutney's manufacturers, as it was known then when her mother, Sarah, made it, to the simpler Mrs. H.S. Ball's chutney. In those days, women went by their initials of their husbands, in the case, Herbert Sandleton Ball. The factory was moved to Woodstock, and the chutney soon began traveling all over the world as news spread of the delicious product. While there are 6 flavors of Mrs. Ball's chutney, the original remains a fan favorite. The official recipe remains a secret. Amelia passed away in 1962 at the age of 97, leaving behind a family legacy that will endure forever. The family business was sold to Brook Bond Company in the 1960s, after which it was sold to Lever Brothers, who eventually sold it to Unilever South Africa. So this business has been sold a few times. In April 2013, Mrs. Ball's became a wholly owned subsidiary of Tiger Consumer Brands Limited. It is now exported to countries like Germany, New Zealand, Australia, and more. Now, how fascinating is the story? There's a couple of fascinating things, right, that we need to draw out from this article that is going to be key takeaways. The first thing is that when you look at the history of the product and where it began, right, and that it was a recipe that belonged to an Indian chef, and to continue with the story. But the thing is, and this is how businesses start, from the smallest and simplest ways. So her husband Mrs. Ball used to make this chutney, and her husband used to sell these in bottles, right? And yeah, so this is how the business began. And even at church bazaars and Then they started making it commercially once it became, more successful and popular, and it was selling. So they ran a small scale operation in their kitchen. So once a business was set up and it keeps going, and the thing is, for me, what's interesting is how many times this company was sold. I mean, it's a few times. So you would think when it was sold, and this is the thing that I don't understand, because there is, although it's a family legacy that's left behind and will endure forever, the business was sold in the 1960s, and then to Lever Brothers, and then to Unilever, and then Tiger Brands. So that is a very interesting story in terms of the journey, if you can call it, that this brand has undergone. So quite interesting. That's how small businesses are actually born. It's through innovation and okay, I'm sharing my screen again. So we're done with the brand value. Then we're going to move on to how do we measure brand value, right? And just trying to think here. I think we have covered that. So no, we haven't covered that. So we're going to look at what actually contributes to brand value. There are a number of things. So when you look at the product value, and so basically this is what makes the brand valuable in terms of a product being a brand itself. So remember the example we used in class. Coca-Cola is not a company, it's a brand. So when you look at Coca-Cola, right, included in product values is the perceived value that stakeholders attribute to the brand without taking the brand price into consideration. So when you look at it, the uniqueness of a brand's product attributes is a significant driver of brand value. Let me just mention that again. The uniqueness of a brand's product attributes is significant driver of brand value. I will look at the Coca-Cola example because it's in the textbook. When you look at Coca-Cola, the attribute of it is the taste that is very different from all other cold drinks. It's not for everyone, but it's like the world's most loved, one of the world's most loved sort of beverages, cold beverages. So the uniqueness of the product is something that actually positions it in that way. The financial value, we've covered that. Shareholder value, also remember we spoke about that. So people who have bought shares in companies, they're expecting value from the brand in terms of it being profitable and being paid dividends. Experience value, right? So the customers play a critical role in establishing the brand's value. Organizations need to take their stakeholders' experiences of the brand into consideration to ensure that they deliver what stakeholders want and expect from them. Then we have the marketing value, and we've touched on that. Brand awareness. Now, the way that brand awareness is created is by organizations increasing their promotional and communication efforts in order to create awareness about the product, the benefits of the product, or what is great about this product. They make use of social media. There's various sort of strategies that they use to reach their target audience. Then there's service value. Now, we spoke about within the organization, and this is providing a service And then that is linked to employee value, where employees actually play an integral role in ensuring that that they help the organization to actually build brand value through their engagement with customers or consumers. Then the last three is management value. Then we have functional value and social value. So social value would speak to corporate social responsibility, and we've touched on that, is the impact that organizations who are financially sustainable are actually contributing to communities. And then, so these ones on page 183, 184, and 185, you can actually read through in detail. There are approaches to how you can measure, for example, brand value. So there is the cost-based approach, market-based approach, income-based approach, and a formulary approach. So this is when you want to measure brand value. So if you looked at that video, the last one, the second to last one that you saw, basically, was the most loved brands. So the brand value, so Amazon, I can't remember, it was number 1 in 2020. It was obviously something in the billions, their brand value. Now, how do people actually establish what the brand value is? What they would do is use this 4 approaches. So the cost-based approach is the costs associated with building and maintenance of the brand. So if you were to build it up again from inception, so if you were to start right at the beginning to where the brand is now, the cost of that would be the cost-based approach. The market-based approach, so this approach, right, determines the worth of the brand and is based on the amount the brand sells for. So this is in the market and how much they're actually selling. What is the sales that they're making? Income-based approach, so the future potential of the brand, and asks for determination of future net revenues attributable to the brand using a discount rate, discounts them to present value. So what you do is, this is also accounting concepts. So you would look at a brand, what it's currently, the cost of it, right? The profitability of it. And what you would do is you do a projection of what the future revenues would be of this specific product or service, right? And then what you would do is you would use a discount rate, and that discount rate brings the present value minus the discount rate. It gives you the present value. It's called net present value in accounting terms, of what the company would be, what revenue would be generated. Then the formulary approach. This approach involves multiple criteria which determines a brand's value. It is furthermore reliant on the profitability of the brand. So one could also look at the profitability of the brand, but there are a number of aspects that are used to measure it. So this is very interesting because remember, in your public relations plan, your PRISA 7-step plan, your measurement and evaluation, if you were tasked with a campaign where you had to measure the brand value, this is the approach you would use, because there's 4 different ways of doing it, and you could actually make use of this approach to establish what is, so once you've done with your evaluation, so one of your objectives was to establish what is the brand value of the company as of this date, etc., etc. then that is in your objective. And then in your evaluation, you would say, this is the current brand value based on this. You've used this and this and this approach, and this is how you've reached the figure of the net brand value. So remember, we had a look at, there was an example of the Starbucks struggling in South Africa. We will play that now. I just want to pause and share screen. Yeah, Starbucks is like a given. You just can't miss this thing wherever you look at it, right? Let's hear why Starbucks is struggling in South Africa.
Starbucks and Domino's. What do those brands have in common? In the US, not much. But in South Africa, they're run by the same parent company, Taste Holdings. And that company is struggling. After opening 12 Starbucks in South Africa, Taste announced in November 2018 that it would stop the rollout of new stores. The company said Starbucks just wasn't making enough money to continue opening new locations. Taste also stopped opening new Domino's, which it said was the biggest underperformer. Even though Taste began opening Starbucks stores again in August 2019, its footprint is still far less than what the company expected when it first entered the market. In 2015, Taste said it saw the potential to open as many as 200 stores there by 2020. Instead, as of 2019, Taste now has just 13 Starbucks locations in South Africa. Taste hasn't had to close any stores, yet. But with its high operating costs and a big price tag most South Africans can't afford, can Starbucks survive in South Africa? Starbucks opened its first location in Seattle in 1971. It quickly became a global brand with 30,000 stores around the world. But Africa is one continent where you won't find many Starbucks. The brand is currently in just 3 African countries: Morocco, Egypt, and South Africa. South Africa is the continent's second largest economy and is now considered a point of entry to the African market for many global brands. When apartheid ended in the 90s, foreign companies returned to the country. South African consumers, who'd long been limited to local players, were curious about international brands. Starbucks expands to a new country in one of an exclusive 25 stores. When Taste opened its first location in Johannesburg in April 2016, it was the first ever Starbucks in sub-Saharan Africa. Lines of people eager to try its coffee snaked around the block when it first opened in Rosebank, a shopping suburb of Johannesburg. Local media reported that some people even waited overnight for their Frappuccino fix. But soon, customer interest dropped as the novelty of Starbucks wore off. Taste slowed the rate at which it opened new stores. The company reported overall operating losses in the first half of fiscal year 2018. At Taste's food division, net losses mounted, widening 51% from fiscal year 2017 to 2018. Starbucks revenue in South Africa grew, but in August 2018, Taste said it wasn't producing the required return on investments to keep opening new stores. Operating costs were also high for Starbucks in the first 6 months of 2018 due to the addition of 8 new stores. In fiscal year 2019, thanks in part to sales from 2 new stores, Starbucks South Africa revenue increased 46% from the year prior to 108 million rand, or about $7 million. But for the 9 stores that have been open for at least a year, same-store sales declined by 19%. Taste Holdings said the double-digit drop in same-store sales showed that the honeymoon period for Starbucks in South Africa was over. Despite the fact that Starbucks products tend to be more expensive than its rivals in South Africa, it's still ranked number 4 in the specialty coffee market, which is valued at $77.6 million in South Africa. Local coffee companies opened in South Africa long before Starbucks did, and analysts say some chains had already nailed Starbucks' casual European style.
There is an established coffee culture, and it's not so easy just to come in and say, hey, we're the new kids on the block, and we're better. The value proposition I think of a Starbucks coming to South Africa, 20 years ago would have been very different. But I think, now a Starbucks coming to South Africa, there's definitely a little bit of a so what factor.
Other international coffee chains have tried and failed to expand in South Africa. Northeast favorite Dunkin' Brands opened stores there in 2016. But in February 2019, its licensor said it would close all Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin-Robbins there due to poor performance. Krispy Kreme opened stores in 2015 with a much more modest goal than Starbucks, to open 31 restaurants by 2020. McDonald's expanded to South Africa in 1995. It has 285 restaurants in South Africa, compared to 13 Starbucks. In 2018, McDonald's said it would invest $105 million in South Africa over the next 5 years. Starbucks' biggest problem in South Africa is how expensive its products are.
Starbucks in general, and this is probably where their big problem lies, is they quite a bit more expensive than all other competition. So on a cappuccino front, they're 15 to 25% more expensive than your other chains that sell arguably just as good coffee or not better. And that's the problem. You come with a premium brand, and that's what people are attracted to. But as soon as your pricing is expensive, you limit yourself to the number of customers who can actually afford it.
Starbucks is aimed at middle and upper class consumers, a segment which is small in South Africa. The World Bank says South Africa has one of the highest inequality rates in the world. From 2008 to 2015, about 20% of the population was considered middle class, which is considerably smaller than in other countries. The average salary in South Africa is about $1,400 a month, or about $17,000 a year.
I'd say probably a price bracket is between like 22 to 35 rand. I'd say that would be like a safe zone to kind of say that what most people pay for their coffee. But something Starbucks are well above that. And so I think that for the majority of people, that's like a great every it's not something they're gonna pay every
latte at Starbucks costs about 60% more than the same amount of McDonald's. South African consumers were strapped for cash when that meant customers in South Africa weren't spending as much on non-essentials, like upscale coffee. And remember Domino's and Starbucks South Africa connection? Taste holding financial woes were a huge problem. Starbucks and carried high debt, which became clear when shares took a nosedive in 2017. 20 and disappointing years in Taste's history. While Starbucks stores are profitable, Taste just couldn't justify the expense of opening any new ones. Taste spent 10 million rand, or just over $650,000, to open its flagship store in Johannesburg. Analysts say local competitors typically open stores for much less, or just about $100,000 per store. Starbucks has the reputation of being a luxury brand, so customers expected a lot. The cost of perks like free Wi-Fi, lots of beverage options, large, clean spaces with room to hang out added up. Plenty of coffee chains in South Africa offer similar amenities, but analysts say opening such expensive stores in a short time period put too big of a financial strain on Taste. If another, more stable company had led Starbucks' expansion in South Africa, it may have gone differently.
If Starbucks was part of a bigger group, I don't think we would be having this conversation. Like, there'd be a lot more stores that they would have opened already, and the financing issues would be hamstringing them in terms of growing the brand.
Taste Holdings refused requests for an interview for this story. Starbucks spokesperson Reggie Borges said in a statement that Starbucks and Taste are optimistic about the brand's opportunity in South Africa. Borges noted that Taste opened its 13th Starbucks in 2019, but that's still a ways off from its full market opportunity of up to 200 stores. There are a lot of forces working against Starbucks in South Africa, but Taste seems confident it can succeed there. Remember those lines around the block when Starbucks first opened? Taste said it recognized Starbucks was in a honeymoon period. Once stores have been open for a year, Taste got a realistic sense of how much consumers would spend at Starbucks. And the numbers didn't look good, with same-store sales dropping 19% in fiscal year 2019. But Taste has a plan to get Starbucks back on track. In 2018, Taste went through a huge executive restructuring. The company appointed new executives with experience operating global brands in South Africa, including a new CEO and COO.
And if anything, the old management team might be blamed for being a bit lax on their spending on new stores. So it would cost them between 5 and 8 million rand to open a new store, which is about $500,000 per store, which is a lot of money, considering that the competitors were opening stores for about 1.5 to 2 million rand.
The new leadership team has been open with Starbucks about their financial problems in South Africa. Taste has even gotten positive feedback from Starbucks about its new business model. Taste plans to keep building new stores in South Africa in 2020. It says it will open stores better suited to the local market. That means stores will be smaller and more visible. They'll also be concentrated in 4 major cities: Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, and Cape Town. And this time around, Taste will consider drive-through store formats that cater to the country's huge car culture. Competitors have already capitalized on this trend by selling coffee at gas stations or near office complexes. But many of the Starbucks open now are in malls.
But I think there's some things like, for example, not being in a mall. I think that's a great start. So location is important. Because at the end of the day, like as a South African, driving to a mall to get coffee is probably not high on the priority list. We drive everywhere. Like to walk somewhere is a very like foreign constant sacrifice. Even if it's close by, it's still a thing we'll drive some.
Taste got a huge cash injection from a multi-million-dollar loan in 2018. But the company says it will need more cash than that to keep opening stores. Taste has said it will open 6 new Starbucks in fiscal year 2020. And in the long term, its goals are still high. It wants to build 200 to 300 Starbucks in South Africa in 10 years. Experts say Starbucks needs more revenue and lower operating costs to work in South Africa. Can Starbucks South Africa survive, or will it follow Duncan's path and become another casualty in the international coffee wars?
Okay, that's the one that you were looking, guys were looking at the video and were thinking, Starbucks struggling in South Africa. So that is reality in terms of Starbucks. They are struggling in South Africa, and the very reason why is because from a price point of view, it's extremely expensive. And I personally, myself, I go to Starbucks once in a blue moon. I will treat myself to something from Starbucks because I love the brand, but I cannot afford to like buy their beverages all the time. So it is expensive, yeah. So anyway, guys, we've reached the end of this module, and there is one more section. It's on page 187. It basically speaks to challenges for communications practitioners. You can read up on that. There is some homework that you guys have to do, which you can do it, and then you can submit to me, even if it's on Monday. And then what I can do is I'll share it on my screen and you can present it in class. There's actually 2 sets. So the one is on a page 188. No, 188. Is it 100? Yeah, 188. And you will see it's the closing case study, why brand health matters. And they are on page 189. There's questions, right? What are the most important best practices that you can identify from this case study? What should any organization do to ensure brand health, etc., etc.? So read the case study. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. Just on page 189, right at the bottom, there's a gray block with an activity relating to General Motors South Africa. And that is the 2 case studies. So you can either do it in Word or PowerPoint, whichever is your preference, but you can then just put that together, and you can send it through by Monday, even if it's Monday afternoon. Then I will download it and share, because we are online next week. So I will share it and then you can present it. So guys, that's it from me. I will chat to you guys next week, and have a great weekend and enjoy Monday. I don't know if you guys going to take some time off, but good luck, and I will chat to you guys online on Tuesday. Thanks, guys.